in. I'm delighted to welcome Jenny Beresford to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, Jenny.
Hi, Alec. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And what a fantastic photo you have behind you there. It looks marvelous.
Oh, it sure is. This is from my penthouse office.
Brilliant, brilliant.
My dreams.
All I can say is to our listeners, I've just been there and what a wonderful place. So don't bypass Dungarvan. Make sure you get to see it. A fantastic spot. And I don't know how I missed it in my long years on this planet. But there we go. There's the plug for Dungarvan for you, Jenny.
Thank you very much. Get it in early. I always think is the best policy. Yep.
And you didn't even have to pay me a cent for it. I just enjoyed the place so much. Anyway, Jenny, as you know, I sort of take everybody on a little trip from their last year in school. And I suppose I just want to ask, what was yours like? Were you the academic? Were you the traveling person? Where were you going? What were you going to be doing?
Where's I going? Yeah, the last year in school, I still wasn't quite sure where exactly I was going to be going. And I have to say, I was a completely average student, Alec, completely average. Like, you know, I wouldn't have worried my parents, but at the same time, they weren't going to have too high an expectation that I was going to be, you know, yeah, maybe giving them medical consultancy as a daughter. That wasn't going to be in the equation. But what I was really interested in is, I suppose, just backtracking a year or two before that, I thought I'd like to go into hotel management. And so I got a job in a local hotel. And within a couple of days, I knew that there was absolutely not a hope in hell that I would do hotel management as a career, because I just think it's so tough and I have huge admiration for anybody who's in it. But I did really enjoy working in that industry, with the whole hospitality, tourism. I found it really exciting, and it was a time, like, it was the early 90s, and so, you know, people were just thinking about, you know, like having more regular holidays and things like that. We just had, you know, Italian 90 and all those type of things. So people were more aware that, you know, there was like life beyond Ireland and England and Spain. And so anyway, I would have loved to have been an air stewardess. And yeah, and at that time Ryanair wasn't really featuring, only in our tourism lectures when they would point out. I used to be mortified because I went to college in Birmingham, but they'd point out about that Irish airline and you had to put your hand up for a newspaper. So anyway, that was the only time you'd hear Ryanair mentioned. But so I had my sights set on Aer Lingus.
Right.
At that time, you needed to have a degree to get into Aer Lingus.
Unbelievable.
So I thought, yeah, completely. It's totally changed now. And because it was mainly nurses that I knew that had gotten jobs in Aer Lingus. So it was, you know, it was a great job to get. So I thought, right, having been aware of we'll say, my desire to travel or to learn more about tourism, and that I found that there was a tourism business management degree that I could do, but it was in Birmingham. And I was aware of the College of Food, Tourism and Creative Studies in Birmingham because I'd worked with so many people in the hotel in Dungarvan where I worked, and they were on placement from this college. So I had a great familiarity with it, and anyway, then I got enough points to get into that college, and the similar courses weren't available in Ireland. It was only certificates in tourism at that stage, which would allow you maybe work in a travel agent, but that was it. That's as far as it would bring you. So anyway, I had a very supportive mother who supported me through this. There wasn't grants in those days for you know, for going to college. Your fees were paid, but there weren't any
living expenses and things like that.
Grants. So my mother totally supported me through this. So I spent 3 fantastic years in Birmingham doing that degree, and getting to go on really interesting class travels as well. We went abroad every year with that, so that was really good. And then at the end of that, I went to America on a J1 visa the year that I graduated, and I got to go to the wonderful Nantucket Island, and so that was kind of the start then of another period,
another chapter in your life. Let me just take it back, because you generally don't think of Birmingham as being the center of the planet in relation to tourism, but obviously there was something there that, you know, they had. And Birmingham certainly must have been an interesting new sort of culture for you to sort of live and blend in with.
You can be sure of it. Yeah, like, you know, at that stage, the zone population of Dungarvan was probably only about 7 or 8,000. And I was only 17. And when I think of it now, like, my mother was very brave. And so was I, like, letting me go to Birmingham with a few million people. And, you know, only known at that stage, it was a handful of people. Um, but it was fantastic. It's a really nice compact city centre, so you know it's easy to navigate, to get around. Again, I huge respect for my mother. She came with me for the first few days and got me a bus pass and helped me figure out, you know, what was
Sure.
what, and she booked me into a digs as opposed to, you know, into a house of the people. So, you know, there was a bit of a mother and a father in the house and all that. But it was great sport. I just seemed to blend in really well, but I was the youngest by far in my course, because most people in the UK go, you know, do a year or two of a college and then they go to kind of a university. So I was much younger than everybody else, but it didn't seem to be an issue. But it allowed me to get to know people of all ages and cultures as well, and it was such an eye opener for me as a 17-year-old. Um, uh, and and I have to say the subjects I found really interesting as well. So, you know, at least I had that. And also there was a handful of people from Dungarvan based there as well. So, you know, you had different groups that you could move to. And then I ended up living in a house with some fantastic girls from a few different countries, and we just gelled, and it was probably the best 3 years of my life, actually.
Well, we won't talk about that because I'm sure there's a lot of stories you're not
Yeah.
quite able to share. But
Yeah.
it's interesting because a lot of people tend to forget, parents letting their children find their feet, and children are much more agile and adaptive than they ever think they are. It also hones your whole skills around networking and
Yeah.
how to find people, which you did.
Yeah.
And then you find your own independence, which is fantastic as well. So there's a lot of skill sets you pick up. It just requires your parents to be a bit on the brave side.
Oh, completely. And I suppose also a bit of diplomacy as well from yourself, you know, because you just don't know like people's backgrounds either. And I look back at it now going, God, when I see 17-year-olds, would I send them off and you know, be trustful that they can find their way and that they'll feel that they belong and that they're, you know, that they're part of like, you know, a real core of people and that. So I kind of like my jaw drops a little bit when I think of it now, going, wow, that was a big step.
It certainly was, but there we go. That's the whole learning of life part of it. But also, you obviously found the bug for traveling because you mentioned that you went off on trips, and I know we talked about Poland, Malta, and Israel. Talk about three diverse countries in terms of tourism. Tell me a bit about those sort of journeys and experience you had.
Sure. Yeah, it was excellent to have the opportunity to go on those trips. Because again, when you're living here, like Ireland, early 90s, you weren't able to just go, you know, like weekend trips or, you know, like breaks were far more traditional type of package holidays than they are now. So to get to go the first year we went to Poland, and as I was saying, that was a bus trip from Birmingham. So it was 36 hours to Poland,
Wow.
36 hours back from Poland. And yeah, sure, the fragrances on the bus was just amazing. Yeah. But again, you know, I'd never been through a number of countries in Europe that we had to travel through, so that was even great. And then we went to Poland, and we got to go to some of the I suppose you'd call them heritage sites, tourism sites, like, you know, and some of those being, you know, post-war sites as well. Um, and and just to look around, I have to say Poland at that stage, this is 1993, 1994, it was really bleak and miserable and really, like, I would think a tough life for people living there. It was all very much concrete blocks, concrete areas. Everything was grey, and it was just there was very little that was vibrant or
Appealing
bright.
to it.
Yeah, yeah. Now they had some nice little squares in the city centre. Krakow is where we went to, and so there's nice squares in the city centre, but outside of that, where people were dwelling was like you could just think that like this is really
Yeah.
It's tough. It's very tough. So I went back to Birmingham then and really appreciated like where I lived there, where I lived in Ireland. And the next year then they brought us to a much sunnier place called Malta. And
Fantastic.
yeah, and so our trip there was much more focused on kind of new tourism and kind of tourism demands for kind of a newer generation. Obviously, the trip to Poland was to focus on emerging tourism, like completely foundation emerging tourism.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and the next one was a step up. And then the last year we went to Israel. So that was, again, was like a place that I don't think that, general public or not, you'd normally not necessarily go on your family holiday there, or the
Sure.
only time I'd heard of people going, and my aunt went to a kibbutz there before, so they're the only types of trips to Israel that I'd ever really heard about before. So it was great to get there. We stayed in Eilat and we traveled by bus up to Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And, I was explaining to my son recently about the Dead Sea and the Red Sea and all that. And it's great to be able to say that, like, I was there, I was actually
Yes.
there. And yeah, because, I can count on one hand the amount of people that I know that actually have experienced all that. So, it's great.
Yeah, no, it's
It was
fantastic. So you found
super
your love for
opportunities.
travel. You got to see some diverse places, but the big one was waiting for you. The J1 off to the States and Nantucket.
Yeah. Actually, a family friend was in Nantucket and he needed staff. The family friend is actually from Balbriggan in Dublin, and he was working over on Nantucket for a few years, and he was managing a pizza restaurant, Steamboat Pizza, and he needed staff. So when his mum and my mum are great friends, and they were chatting, so he said that he could give myself and my friends jobs there. So sure, we didn't know, like, Nantucket versus I don't know, Atlantic City didn't matter to us. We just knew we were going on a J1 visa, so like wherever we were promised a job is where we'd go, not realizing what gift he was actually giving us. Like,
Sure.
Nantucket is just the most spectacular, idyllic place. I actually pined for Nantucket for 20 years. Like, I
Wow.
absolutely pined for it for 20 years, until one day I was coming over the causeway in Dungarvan, which you can see behind me, and I looked out and I thought, I have everything here that we had in Nantucket. But I have to say, it was kind of the formula for an awful lot of what would happen over the course of the next 20 years in my work life. We weren't working in a pizza place, and then next door was a bike shop, and so the owner there needed help with the girls on the counter to do the paperwork for the bikes. And so we all double jobbed, and it was very common to work 80 hours a week. That's kind of a standard.
Yeah.
And so and then from the second year onwards, I started a more senior role in the bike shop. And then by the third year, I was managing the bike shop and all the staff. The bike shop was actually, there was 3 different outlets. I managed one, but I managed the staff for the 3 outlets. So there was great people management experience that I gained from that, but also we were renting bikes, and so it was all sales, and it was all demand led and tourism, and there was a huge overview. And so obviously people needed refreshments after the bikes, so hence the pizza shop next door. And if anybody knows anything about Dungarvan, it's kind of like what's happened around here. So it's really good. But also the importance of trails there for bikes, and the importance of the ancillary services for tourism, the importance of the infrastructure for tourism, all those type of things that you're learning about and you don't even realize you're learning. And Nantucket could only be accessed by ferry or by air. So
Right.
there was control around the amounts of people that were coming in or out, or that's why the waves of people would come kind of 11 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning when the ferry gets in. But also, I suppose, it kind of contains development on the island. It contains an awful lot of how even a lot of the American cultures or traditions are not necessarily embraced by this particular island. They try and keep it very quaint, and they give a huge nod to kind of heritage there. And so there's still the cobblestone streets, and still the magnificent houses and shop fronts and everything, wharfs and all the rest of it is just gorgeous. But I was like, fine dining was a massive thing there that like hadn't reached Dungarvan certainly.
Sure.
So on our nights off, which were very few, you would like totally go out and you could spend a couple of $100s then just on your dinner, because we were blowing the money. we earned for the week. But it actually gave me a great insight into the whole, like, you know, food tourism and fine dining as well. So it was, I have to say, you know, it's retrospectively you look and you kind of go, God, those experiences actually all mounted up into something, as opposed to at the time you're just enjoying them for what they are on an individual level.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the purpose of the radio show, because everybody has taken a journey. And often what happens is they've forgotten the various steps that they took and the influence they had on that journey to take them to where they are now.
Yeah, oh, I totally get it. And actually, I have to say, Nantucket was a place that really inspired me about civic pride that people had,
Wow.
and their work ethic. Yeah, that was the place that like totally instilled it. Now, I come from a family, we'll say, of business owners where, you know, it was always you'd look after your property, you'd look after outside your property, you'd sweep the street, you'd pick up the rubbish, you know, you had a pride in your area. But to see it at home doesn't mean as much as when you see it abroad, and when you see all these people on Nantucket, and the natives especially, you know, are hugely proud that they are, you know, native and year-rounders. And then you can see the pride of the people who holiday there quite considerably, and they want to wear their older t-shirts that say Nantucket with the frayed edges, so people know that they've been here for a long time, you know, and that they're nearly local. And that people with the bumper stickers, they'd have it's a license to go out to different beaches, and you get a sticker for your bumper sticker, and people would be reluctant to sell their cars because the bumper stickers would go back so many years. You know, you could identify, like, you know, up to 20 years earlier, so people go, oh, that's a person who, you know, he's kind of from here. But the civic pride and how careful people were about their surrounds and everything, like, you know, rubbish wasn't an issue. Certainly antisocial behavior, there wasn't anything like that. We never had a lock on our door. On any house I lived in, there was no locks on the doors. There was no crime, there was no theft, possibly because it was an island as well, and an
Sure.
affluent one. But it just didn't happen. People were so proud of this beautiful place, and they tried to keep that that intact, and also just to keep that true to its word all the time. That there was never a moment that you would think that that either you or your property were threatened in any way. It just wasn't an issue at all, at all.
It's amazing with all that knowledge and influence and experience that you picked up over there. I mean, you did eventually come back to Dungarvan, but you brought that with you. I mean, hence you're doing the job that you're doing now today, and for so long, which we'll come on to in a minute. But just talk about coming back to Dungarvan and diving in at the deep end again.
Yeah, I came back then for a winter and got a job in the moorings in Dungarvan. And if anybody knows that, it's right on the water's edge, and it's a fantastic bar and restaurant. One of the oldest here. It's a really old building. And it was I was back for a winter, and the bar was changing hands, was changing owners. And so the new owners, the Quinns, who are still there now, they offered me a job as a bar manager. And at that stage, I was 25, and I was kind of going, God, I'm getting a bit old now for touring around a bit. Ridiculous. And so anyway, I took the job as bar manager there, and I was with them for about 3 years, I think. And again, that was some learning curve. You know, that was a different type of people management then, because you're dealing with a clientele that's, you know, generally older than you. It wasn't like a young person's bar. And also, when there's a change of ownership any place, you know, you have to be mindful of the type of clientele that you want to set as your regulars.
Sure.
And so, you know, we had you know, that was a journey even to process that and to have it established. And then the food side of the moorings was really up and coming at that stage. And so we were very busy for food, and the owner was and has since keeps developing the place. It's magnificent, and like a beer garden, and the people want to sit outside on the water's edge and that. So it was just difficult to try and manage logistically to optimize all the opportunities, we'll say, you know, and manage your staffing and manage the weather and manage your stock and all the rest of it. But it was a really busy place, and we had great fun working there as well, even though it was really tough. But my God, there was great camaraderie always in those type of environments, I always think.
It must have presented some sort of different challenges. I mean, coming from Nantucket, which you said was an island and fairly much virtually crime-free in every sense of it, even sort of public order and all of that. I'm not suggesting Dungarvan has issues any of that way at all, but the Irish have a different way of sort of enjoying themselves.
Oh, they sure do. Because like even trying to get into, a bar in Nantucket, there's so many security and you have to, prove your age and all the rest of it. Whereas here you just walk in. And so, yeah, it could be up to you to be security and to be, to be security on the door, to be like the cop inside checking IDs, to be managing how much people are drinking and that. But I had lived in Australia as well at this stage. We spent a couple of winters in Australia, just to go back slightly. And there I did a bar training course actually. So we went through some of those scenarios. So we actually picked up a few helpful things. But yeah, it was no joke sometimes trying to be really nice and advise people that, maybe you shouldn't have too many more and they're, 25 years older than you. And it's not, the best position to be in, but sure, it's something new to do. And I was just part of the job.
You discover the word diplomacy.
yeah we all have to try and bring that into workplaces, no matter what age we are or what type of workplace it is. But and I think that God, I suppose years you get wisdom and you also chill out a little bit more. And so I kind of think now, like I certainly acted with diplomacy, but I think having 20 years on it now, I kind of go, yeah, I probably would have done it a little bit differently. But at the same time, there was no big issues, and
yeah, fantastic. And I suppose if we all reflect, we would have done things differently.
Yeah.
But that boat has well sailed.
Sure.
Anyway, this leads me on to the role you took up. How many years ago was it now, Jenny, in terms of CEO of Dungarvan and Waterford Dungarvan Chamber?
Oh, yeah. That was 13 years ago that I'm here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was a position I saw advertised on the newspaper, and I just thought, it was actually a cousin rang me and said, you should apply for that. You'd be great at every part of it. And so I kind of looked at it, but the way you'd always have like an imposter syndrome or kind of go, no, I couldn't really, or yeah. So anyway, I thought, wow, it really appeals to me. And I put in an application, and hey presto, I got the job. So I was thrilled, like absolutely thrilled. Because I was always into as well kind of like business development, and my job just prior to that had been sales manager for a company as well. So I'm always kind of keen for business development, but I was the first paid person that they had taken on. So this was really a developmental role, and that the Dungarvan Chamber were taking such a risk on this as well, that if I wasn't going to generate my income, well, where was it going to come from? So they really had to be confident that I was going to fulfill every aspect of the role that they set out. So I started that January 2008, and then
that's a good year. That's a good year to start
anything. Amazing. Yes. I bought a house that year as well. Yeah, that was
well done.
Oh God. But yeah, so that was quick learning curve, I can tell you. That by September you're kind of going, oh my God, will there be any business left operating? But at the same time, I started and there was just under 100 members. And now we've got around 300 members. So, we're able to build the whole membership side of things really sustainably. And those, are loyal members, and like our retention is massive. So that's been really, really productive and also like heartening as well. That and also consistent, but in tandem with that, we're able to just build kind of the profile down here and build other sides of our income, like sponsorship and events and things like that too. So, like really I was kind of given, as somebody said, I was given a brand and I was able to scope it out and just make it into
make it relevant to the audience that you got there.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of the chamber. It has to be relevant, and you have to you have to preempt and also react. at the same time to an awful lot of things. So you could be preempting an awful lot of things and trying to draw people's attention to it, that, this is going to impact your business, and please, here's a warning, this will impact your business. And again, hi, this will impact your business. And people are just, they're on their own little, they're at their own pace, and sometimes they don't have space for anything else coming in, but yet something big could happen, like Brexit or GDPR or rates reevaluation, all those things that would be flagged. And it's until it actually happens that people then realize, oh my God, that's impacting my business. And so it's then you have to do kind of the reactive stuff with members. So that's why things are kind of twofold here. So but
yeah, I think businesses underestimate the power of the chambers and the influence it can have on their businesses, and some see it as a sort of stuffed shirt old place for old business people chewing on cigars. But talk about the relevance of chamber. I mean, we've about 2 minutes left, 2.5 minutes left, just to talk about. I'd like to talk about the relevance of a chamber, not just necessarily your own one, but specifically yours as well, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I just think chambers are integral any place. They really keep people connected, and also they're able to flag an awful lot of either what's coming, what's available, or what's coming down, or what is either an opportunity or a threat to you. For example, the big ticket like lately was COVID. We generated at least 30 new members since COVID last year, and that's because of our leadership, and that's because we're able to deliver information, we're able to kind of filter it, we're able to handhold people into like what is there for you specifically for your type of business. We're able to connect businesses. We act as a platform to connect businesses maybe to other stakeholders, to agencies, to government departments, to elected members. We fix problems. So, the most random problems, people connect into their chamber and they get those fixed. And it's also an instant community. People have described it as like kind of a life support system, or like having a 24/7 phone line there. You don't need it all the time, but when you need it, it's an emergency. So it's that type of support that you have. It's people who are experts in their fields, and if they're not, they'll connect you with somebody who is an expert. And that's what you need for your business. You need to know that there's somebody behind you kind of going, you're okay, I've got you, tell me what you need and I'll give it to you. So that's exactly what a chamber is, and it's there to help everybody, no matter what your business is, help every type of businesses to benefit as much as they possibly can from what's going on within the wider community or the environment.
Well, I think that's a very positive message to finish on. And as a member of Dublin Chamber for 30 years, I can certainly be an advocate for chambers all over. For people who wish to contact you, Jenny, would you like to tell them where's the best place to get you?
Sure, yeah. Dungarvan and West Waterford Chamber is the official name for the chamber. So jenny@dungarvanchamber.ie. Or we're on all types of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever and website, obviously, dungarvanchamber.ie.